Welcome back. We're in the Drash section. We'll be looking at the Midrash later, hopefully. I wanted to go over some verses that it points out. But a question I have is, how do you disarm principalities and powers? Well, if these forces of wickedness, like the darkness, needs and hungers for light to feed off of, if they're not beings of light on their own, like they don't have any kind of source, in order for them to continue to exist, they need something with energy. So if we are beings that have energy in us, there'd be two ways to disarm them. The one would be to make this a kingdom of total darkness, where if this is the place where they are thrown to be punished, and we're in the same world with them, if it's a place of darkness where we don't even know they exist and we're so distant from God as well, then they can't really contact us to make us afraid, to feed off of our energy. Like if there's no contact, then they can't influence us. We can't be brought down by them. So it could be a kingdom of total darkness, or it could be a kingdom of total light, where people are so on such a high spiritual level that they can't be deceived by these forces. So it's just obvious, like, you're a dark creature, you're trying to trick me, I'm not going to be brought down. And now the evening is a time of deception, a time of intermingling, where they're able to get a grasp and like suck the light of that previous day. So like the light of the righteous, right? As far as like everybody has some of this light in them, and they'll suck it out of those that are have a foothold, like fear or some kind of negativity, suck it out. But even as the night progresses, it's like they've sucked that life out of people to where there's no more life to suck, or that the righteous are sleeping. So by that time that the night progresses, basically there's no more life to suck out of people. And then it's like they yield to the day, because they're like, well, we know that we need life to be renewed in order for us to feed again. So then they'll take a break in that way. So now my thought is, with this second day of creation, that he needed to make a place of ignorance. So it's like a coffin where he's taming the darkness. So this is like the first way, but we know Messiah disarms the principalities, and it kind of is the dawning of the day, maybe like a time of light. So that's the other way to defeat them. But this is making it probably like a time of darkness, maybe, where Adam had to choose, right? And he kind of chose the darkness, the dark way. But anyway, a way that he could have disarmed the darkness where there's no power in it anymore. It's just this place of peace. We don't walk outside and sense evil spirits and stuff, but I think that stuff is kind of waking up again. And so the day of the Lord, when it arrives, is called a day of evening. So there'll be those that are like a time of light and darkness at the same time. So I would picture this as a time of evening, and I think that's kind of what we're approaching. Another way I picture that this firmament did is that it's actually protecting the fallen sons of God who probably initiated this battle that needed to cause this separation of up and down, of heaven and earth. So on day one, we probably got the four directions because we got a separation between light and darkness. But now we're having a separation between this other light and darkness, the heavens above and the earth below. So now the earth below becomes this kingdom of darkness. So if God in his mercy did not send this beaten work to come and stand between the ones that could stand in his presence and the one who would just be instantly consumed, then they would have been. And so there's like this delay, but it's also hiding us so that we can't see God clearly. And I really think that what we're doing is like these reincarnations from these ancient spirits, and we all got this little bit of souls from the past that need to continue to go through rectification, through tikkun, to be purified in order to be able to stand in God's presence. So this is a place where God's presence can't be like manifested directly, or else we would just be consumed. So there's like this really like firm heavens, and we were speculating before that this heavens could be like a Torah scroll that's rolled out. So when he looks on earth, he doesn't see earth, he sees the word. So it's like he's seeing his son, whose Messiah is called the Torah, like the word that comes down to us and takes on flesh. He's seeing the word, and so it helps him like judge better. He's seeing the water, which is, I think it might be like mercy, but water can also be Torah. So he's seeing the word. And Isaiah here wants him to shatter the heavens. This word here is like to shatter, to rend the heavens, to come down. But we have to know that if he does, that the enemies will be consumed. So we're having this free choice in order to make this rectification for these past deeds and stuff, to continue to progress, to be able to stand in his presence. And we all would want this to, we would say we'd want to be able to stand in his presence right now, but if we did, we'd probably be naked, a lot of us. So we have so much more work to do, but we still long for that time where we can be this kingdom of light, for that the light would break forth. But this means that if the Rakia was taken out of the way, if God did come down, fire would kindle the brushwood, cause the water to boil. He would make his name known to the enemies so that the nations will tremble at his presence. When you did awesome works that we did not expect, you came down, and the mountains trembled at your presence. From ancient times, no one has heard, nor ear has perceived, no eye has seen any God beside you, who acts on behalf of those who wait for him. Okay, so like this verse is in the New Testament, and so it kind of shows that we became a kingdom of light, at least those who accepted him, because now we have this connection through the Spirit, because this quotes this verse and it says, but we have the Spirit of God, we can know all things. But it's like he's still giving some time for repentance, this prolonging this like era of Messiah, son of Joseph, until all the repentant ones have come in, and then yes, he will rend the heavens, because between the 6th and 7th seals, the heavens are rolled up, and he comes down and judges the earth. The amount of verses covering the second day of creation is probably the shortest passage in all of the creation account, as far as how many words or verses are devoted to a particular day. Just 3 verses for day 2, the second day. But there are other verses that give us clues throughout the Bible. One of these passages being Psalms 104. So maybe since it wasn't a good day, like good happening, that he couldn't say anything good, he doesn't maybe want to give so much attention to it, or because this is like water that comes from light, and that light is a hidden light, he doesn't want to reveal. If this is talking about the cornerstone, when the cornerstone is laid and Messiah says he's the cornerstone, then this is something hidden. But when we use like these hints to connect it with other passages, more of the story can come out. So the first verse is like an introduction where he's blessing God and saying how great and majestic he is. And then he's saying, covering light like the mantle, bowing a heaven like the reverberating curtain so it can shake or blow in the wind. The intense encounter in the waters, the setting upper chamber of you clouds, probably the intense walking of chariot of you upon wings of spirit or wind, producing angels of you, spirits or winds, intense ministers of you, kindling fire. So this doesn't have to mean that they are burning fire. It might mean that like fire comes out of their mouth, because that's what the 2 witnesses have to do to kill anyone that's opposing them. You founded earth upon fixed place of her, so that she will not be shaken, perpetual and until. So now we have this like picture of if there was this battle between the morning stars, this first lights, and the sons of God, where there's maybe dissension because of the one who stands in the midst. Like when Messiah came, there was this division between the people. Some wanting to kill him, a lot of the crowds loving him. And then if there were those who were wrong, then intense fire could have come out of these devoted servants of him, because like the disciples, when they received this power, probably from the mountain transfiguration of the two witnesses, probably, that they wanted to just burn this city to the ground. And he's like, no, that's not how we're going to go about it. But that's like a reaction of someone who is devoted, like Joshua said, to rebuke those who are prophesying in the camp, because they're so devoted to their leader, to Moses, in this example. And so maybe what happened was that these morning stars or light, they're going to burn, that like judgment wants to go out from them to consume the enemies, but instead he kind of stands on behalf of them. And I guess I need to show you a really nice picture of what this could look like. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. So here we could have a picture of waters above, waters below. And if you take away those lines of the dippers, they could actually form crosses, like thieves on either side. So it turns out we're all sinners. Like, we want to blame others, but it turns out we've all gone astray. So these are like the three groups of the sons of God. We have the little fold and the big fold is what they really are, like sheepfolds. And so he wants them all to be one fold, but until like forgiveness can be made, make peace between the day and the night. So there must have been some kind of need to make balance on the first day, right? This firmament. And then same here. Now, if you count this though, like each of the crosses would have 7 stars. And what's missing then is not that he takes a third of all the stars of heaven, but a third of these stars. Now, like the entire constellations, like the Big Dipper, it has other stars, but these prominent stars is what I'm talking about, that there could have been 7 stars fall from Draco the dragon. In other words, before he was a dragon, he had wings. And then those were stripped from him and he falls to the earth because he can't fly anymore. So he's lifted up like a serpent in the place of the serpent that is fallen. So he stands in that one's place so that the light does not overwhelm the darkness until peace can be made between the day and the night. And God said, let there be an expanse between the waters to separate the waters from the waters, covering light like the mantle, bowing a heaven like the reverberating curtain. Okay, this could mean that he's covering light, not that he's wearing light. Maybe it means that he is covering the light like a mantle. It could mean that the light comes to them, but it's covered with a mantle, like Moses had to put a veil over his face because he shone so much and people couldn't approach him. But this light is now being covered like a mantle.
Good job.
And he is bowing a heaven. It just like, it could be multiple heavens, but it's not the heaven is what I'm saying. So it's bowing heaven like the reverberating curtain. And before there was speculation that at this point it hasn't solidified. So then now in verse 7, he has to make the expanse. So God produced, he made the expanse and separated the waters beneath it from the waters above, and it was so. The intense encounter in the waters, the setting upper chamber of your clouds, the intense walking of chariots of you upon wings of spirit wind, producing angels of you, spirits, intense ministers of you, kindling fire. So when I think that God produced the expanse, that is that he carried this out like the death of his son kind of thing. So he divides, but then he's carrying this out because it's like this idea of like a coffin or something, you know, like the ark of the covenant, to separate. So it's like death first and then resurrection. So there's this intense encounter in the waters, and we could look at the Hebrew to see where I get this wording of it's an intense encounter. And then, so we have waters below, that just turn to harmless clouds, right? So maybe before they were spirits, they were wind, and like the air is light too. So it's this connection of these spirits who are illuminators, right? It doesn't mean that they literally illuminated necessarily. So it's like the same thing when you call them light or you call them spirit. Our spirits are kind of like illuminators. So now his chariot is upon the wind. So this could be like the upper waters, because his like the living creatures above them was the firmament, and this is where he dwelt, and the whole thing was his Merkava, his chariot. And we could see that God making the expanse could be making angels, because it's that same word that I translate producing, that making angels of you where they're going to be like the flaming fire that guards the Garden of Eden so nothing passes. And so they're like kindling fire, and this kindling fire could have actually been what hardened the firmament, right? So instead of the waters below being like burned up in this heat of judgment, these spirits that sinned, perhaps the 7 fallen stars, that he just kind of stands in their place and takes the heat and takes all the blame on himself, like this cross in the middle. He goes where those stars should have been, and so the stars don't die, he dies on their behalf, is how I feel. That the story that we have is how he dies for us, but the Lamb was also slain since the founding of the world. And so it's like these 3 loaves, these 3 pressing down of the same loaf of bread. These first sons of God, they went as far as they could until they failed, and then he's staying in their place. And then it's like Israel kind of takes their place, but their spirits could come from this same source. So Israel is just going to go as far as they can, and he's like, I know you're going to fail. And so like they did. And then like Messiah comes, and it's like dying in the place of Israel. He dies for the Jews. He's only sent to them. But then there might be like this third death phase where it's Yom Kippur being fulfilled, and it's the 2 witnesses dying. And this completes that 3 stages, the 3 sons of God. So then, because all have sinned, then he can have mercy on all, and we stop blaming each other, thinking we're all better than the other ones. So then God calls the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning the 2nd day. You founded earth upon fixed place of her, so that she will not be shaken, perpetual and until. So here's the actual wording. Who covereth, it says thyself, so you can see that that's added. So you're covering the light with a garment and stretching out the heavens. And this is like the word for rakia, right? Very close. And then this says beams, but this word is only used once. So it's like kara, to encounter. Oh, this word is used other times. So you're encountering, but it's an intense encounter, because it is in the PL and participle. So the participle is like a verb taking on an adjective kind of form, like the one doing the encountering, like a midwife is the one who causes people to give birth. So it's like, I think it's like Yeled with this meme in front of it. So the word is kara. And then so it's this one that causes an intense encounter in the waters, or it could be a place that causes an intense encounter in the water. So I think an intense encounter would be someone who's standing in your path, like that angel with the sword drawn, right? Kind of like the angel that won't let you enter the Garden of Eden, but the angel that encountered Joshua, and he's like, whose side are you on? I'm not picking anybody's side of these two waters. I'm just going to do what's right. Like, if you're doing what's right, I'll defend you. If you're being picked on, I'll defend you. So he's the one that kind of defends the helpless. So he's the one that's the intense encounter. And this is like the word for an ascension offering. So this might be like this upper place of the clouds where he's setting his chariot, Rechuv. He walks his chariot upon the wings, the edges of the wind. And he's making these messengers, these angels, to be spirits, to give them the ruach. It's like one of our souls, kind of. How we have emotions, maybe, the ruach. And these devoted ministers to be the sparks, like ones that kindle fire, perhaps. So it's a kindler, because it's in the participle, a kindler of fire, perhaps. And this is the word for yesod, so something that's hidden, he's founding, because it's in the perfect. He founded the earth upon the, like, kun is something that's established and firm. He made it firm so it would not be removed forever and until. And the deep, like a garment, he covered him. Upon mountains stood waters. So if we're going with, these are like spirits, air that he's dividing between, there could be the seas that was mentioned in verse 2, and that's kind of like what issued out of the womb. But also that from Messiah's side comes water, and that could be water below, because from the light comes water, right? So, like, also that these spirits, if they're in the physical realm, then they could kind of turn to join with the seas that were coming from the deep, from the womb. But I'm thinking that these waters, though, like the waters of the heaven, that this is more like a ruach, wind, air. So there is water in the air, but the one is becoming clouds, and the other one is remaining spirits that can breathe fire. Day 3 is next, so then we can learn more context that obviously this is happening next. So we're seeing that these verses here are most likely talking about day 2. So then he's covering the deep with like a garment. Upon the mountains the water stood, and at his rebuke they're going to flee away. At the voice of his thunder they're going to hasten away. They go up the mountains and they'll go down by the valleys to the place which he founded for them. So that's another yesod. And he's going to have a boundary that he's set, and they will not pass over it to again cover the earth. Our next section is Isaiah 64. That gives us clues what happened on the second day. The Rephaim are birthed from under waters, and dwellers of them. Sheol exposed before him, and there is not a covering to the Abaddon. Stretching north upon meaninglessness, hanging earth upon there is not what. Binding up like a besiege, waters in clouds of him, and not be rent cloud under them. intensely seizing faces of throne, scattering to expand elsewhere upon him cloud of him. He circled boundary upon faces of waters until perfection of day with night. Pillars of heaven he agitates, and dumbfounded from rebuke of him. In strength of him he disturbed the sea, and in understanding of him he smites through proud. In spirit wind of him heavens polished to shine clear. Hand of him he profaned or pierced through the fleeing serpent. So a lot of this is obviously talking about the firmament of day 2, and this could be giving us a clear picture of what happened on that day. So this translation was actually from Job 26. So this is Job speaking, and he's asking his friends how they've actually shown that they have wisdom, or how they have a neshama in them, how that has come forth from them, because he's saying they're not very good comforters. So this is the word for Rephaim. I think it comes from the word for healing. So these beings that came down, maybe they're supposed to be healers, they're supposed to be like distributors of light, like how the light heals, but instead they become known as the dead, the Rephaim. And here is the uses of this word if you're curious. It says dead things. So supposedly the flood wiped out the Rephaim, but perhaps Og survived, and he was like the last remaining alive of these beings. Or maybe like for a few hundred years after the flood they were still dying off, because I think in Enoch it says that you have this amount of time to live, and your children will just kill each other until there's none left, and then you'll get locked up for 70 generations. So here is the Rephaim, that it used to be their land and it became inhabited by these other people. So how did these Rephaim come about? They were birthed. This polal is a unusual form, but here are the uses. So sometimes it could bring forth, or to be birthed. These different forms here, but this idea of writhing, it to be in anguish, to be pained from under waters. I don't know if this could mean like through waters, because of waters. So because it's like substituted from, interesting word here, under, instead of, beneath, the under part of. So all these other things, like from day 5, they come from the waters, I think. So these Rephaim, though, it's hinting that they're coming from these waters that are under the heavens, perhaps, as in these are the beings that crawl out of it, just like that generation that was the first generation that came from those fallen beings that came down before the flood, that demons were said to come out of their bodies in the book of Job. So this is how we get these evil spirits of the Rephaim here on earth. Probably they're writhing from under the waters, and also the dwellers of them. So there's other people that kind of join with them. And so this is that word for like how Adam and Eve were naked, as in now they couldn't see divine revelation. They were exposed before they could see, and now they were just kind of like exposed to beasts and stuff. They're just all vulnerable, and they used to be so powerful, like almost all seeing. They could just see so far. And Sheol is a place of asking, when you're standing before him and there is not a covering, like how our mitzvahs can be a covering, these good things. And when Adam and Eve fell, part of our room comes from cunning. So it's like a word play, that the serpent was cunning, and now they were no longer wise. It's that other kind of take on the serpent's cunning, and now you're exposed. It's like obvious to God. this cunning.